So I think we've kind of seen that it's pretty hard to move through our society without ever incurring debt. Why do I bring that up? Because I don't want you to feel guilty about it. Okay? Don't beat yourself up. Maybe grandma or great-grandpa said, don't ever owe anybody a dime. Well, that might have worked in his time, but it's probably not going to work now. When I was a young mother, my ex-husband was in the military. We had a small child. Man, I was struggling. My husband had an opportunity to attend a training, but it required us to purchase some special equipment. We didn't have the money. So I called my dad, and I asked him if I could borrow $10. 10. The wisdom in that, the value in that. But you know, I need it now. And you know, the baby would rather suck on a bottle than a passbook savings thing. I'm sorry, that's just kind of the way they are. And I said, so as long as we're going to do this exercise, and remember, this is the college professor who said I was just going to get married and make babies. Let's talk about your budget. Let's see if you can tell me where all of your money goes. Okay? And after everything he could think of, which included way more than I thought was cool on alcohol, but that's okay. I wasn't making any value judgments on how we spent it. I just wanted to see if you could tell me where it went. And this was 45 years ago. He had $2,000 a month left over he couldn't account for. Are you saving it? No, we already talked about that. Well, where's it going, Dad? So, are you going to send me the $10? Now, I have 2 younger siblings, and when they were teenagers, and by then I was married because, I got married right out of high school. And my brother kind of got into betting on highlight. That's, kind of like handball. Got himself into some trouble and had to go to Dad. Dad gave him a real hard time. And then later, my little sister went to college at FSU and decided to move in with her boyfriend and a couple of his friends and didn't understand when Dad quit paying child support. And they both came to me. And they said, how is it that you can talk back to Dad? How is it that you can get him to do what you want him to do? I said, well, number one, I was the first, and that helps. Just gotta say, But number two, I don't come at him with nonsense. I don't just spout off an opinion. I've informed myself. I've gathered my facts, and it makes sense. So, Brian, do you really think Dad should support your betting on highlight? Really? What in our upbringing made you think that was something he was going to support? I suggest you figure out how to dig your way out and maybe go to him with some realistic plan, and he might help you. Now, my sister didn't speak to me for almost 2 years when I said, okay, there's a basic problem with expecting Dad to pay your child support while you're living with your boyfriend and 2 of his friends. It seems to me that making the decision to live with your boyfriend and 2 of his friends is an adult decision. If you are adult enough to make that decision, then you are adult enough to do it without Dad's child support. Yeah, she didn't speak to me for 2 years, but later she told me I was right. Okay? You can use that skill. Okay? I watch colleagues go to the CEO and they go on, and I'm sure, Dr. Blanson, you've had people come in your office and they have a problem. And it goes down one of 2 ways. They either have a problem and they want to spend an hour telling you about the problem, and then they want you to come up with a solution, as if that's the only problem that's been brought to you today. Or they have a great idea for a solution and it's so detailed, and they're down in the weeds on the color of the pencils. They couldn't care less about what color pencil they use, right? If you want somebody to help you with a problem, go to them with a solution and make it quick. Make it make sense, make it quick, and get out. They're busy people. Okay. So we're going to move up the hierarchy using some debt, right? But we're going to do it wisely. We're going to do it carefully. So what are some ways to either stay out of debt, those of you who managed to do it? I think you did. You owe rent, but you just forgot. Right? So how can we stay out of debt? Well, I'm going to suggest that there are 2 ways. Actually, that's not true. There are 4 ways that work together. 1, you can live within your means.
Right.
If you don't have the money, you don't buy it. That's pretty simple, right?
Right.
So sometimes it's kind of hard to do. The tire goes flat, this happens, life happens. Life is always going to happen. So you can reduce your expenses. That can be challenging. And that requires knowing the difference between a want and a need. Bingo, yes. Big difference, right? You can increase your income. Ladies, let's do it legally, okay? But you can increase your income, and now with the internet, there are lots of ways that you can do it without ever leaving home. Okay?
Illegal.
How many of you are old enough to remember Beanie Babies? Yeah. I told you we don't always get it right. None of us gets it right all the time. I invested heavily in Beanie Babies. I was going to pay for my daughter's college education. Those Beanie Babies are still in the closet. And as soon as I retire, I'm going to set up a shop on eBay or whatever. I don't care how much to take them out of my closet. Okay? Maybe some of you are clothes hogs. Got some clothes in the closet you're not wearing? Okay? There are some sites where you can post them. Sell them. Somebody else will love it. So you can reduce your expenses. You can increase your income. Here's something that I have found that's very effective. It's called regular savings. Oh man, that's boring. Okay, but here's something that I started doing. Man, it is so cool. My car has a little, container that stuff lands in. Well, the stuff that lands in there is coins I get in change. And when it's full, I scoop it out, and I have one of these great big pickle jars, and it all goes in the pickle jar. And when I almost can't pick up the pickle jar anymore, I take it to one of those machines and roll it. You'd be surprised how much money just came down that pickle jar, okay? So the other thing I do is I have a little Altoid mints can thing up there in the car. And when I get $1 bills in change, they go in there. I can do anything with that I want. I can have Starbucks every day if there's dollar bills in that tin. When that tin runs dry, I have to go drink whatever it is we have at the house. It's adequate. It's not as much fun. When I get $5 bills, they go in a tin in the closet. And those $5 bills have a very special purpose. Once a year, I sit down with all of the travel-sized toiletries I've collected in hotel rooms. Okay? Do you leave those behind? Don't leave them behind. You paid for them, okay? It was part of the hotel with you.
Yeah.
I sit down with those.
I take all of them.
If it's winter time, I go buy some socks, I buy some tissues, whatever, and I get some Ziploc bags. And I make comfort bags for the homeless. and I tuck a $5 bill in every one, and I keep them right behind the front seat so that if I am stopped at a red light and there's somebody there, I can reach out and hand them a comfort bag. Okay? That's what I do with those $5 bills. And they're also there, you know, in an emergency. Sometimes, especially when you're college students, it's a flat tire that throws your month out of whack.
Yeah.
Well, what if you can go digging around? You don't have to just stick with the couch cushions. Okay, you can use a container in the car. You can use an Altoid box, something else. What if you've got these little stashes? And if you have to, you can go rate them, place that tire, and go on about your life. Okay? The idea here is I don't want you to go into debt for those little unexpected expenses. Okay? Have some stuff stashed back. Now, of course, part of this is budgeting. And budgeting is sitting down and saying, how much do I have coming in? How much is going out? And how can I make sure there's a little left over to stash back? Studies done by financial advisors and by legal aid lawyers shows that we can dramatically improve a family's financial stability if we can get them to the point where they have $1,000 in savings. Just $1,000. Now, to some of you, you're thinking, oh my God, I'll never see that. Yeah, you will. You'll get there. Okay? First day of law school, my husband dropped me off and he said, just remember, all you lack is finishing up. And inch by inch, anything's a cinch, which is just another way of saying that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Boy, I strung 3 together. How about that? Okay, so you can do it. Budget, save some little pockets here and there so that you have something to fall back on. That's how you stay out of it. Okay. But as we already know, most people don't manage to stay out of debt. That's okay. That's okay. There are 3 categories of debt. Although most lawyers or financial advisors are going to tell you there's only 2. Anybody want to guess what those 2 are? Okay, there's secured debt and there's unsecured debt. Secured debt means you put up some collateral. If you don't pay the debt, the collateral goes bye-bye. The car's going to be repossessed. You're going to be kicked out, sleeping in a box under the freeway somewhere. That's secured debt. That's actually a little bit easier to get because the person that loaned you the money has a way to pull it back. Are your student loans secured debt?
No.
Nope. Don't have anything they can come and take. No matter what happens, the knowledge in your brain stays in your brain. Once you get a certificate or degree, you frame that thing, put it on the wall, nobody's going to come and take it back. It's always yours. But I'm going to suggest that there's another category of debt. The debt that never goes away. Yes, we have a few of those in our society. Now, I will also tell you that if you're going to owe people money, Texas is the state to be. Because Texas protects so much of an individual's assets that if you don't pay the credit card bill, you got nothing they can take. Most people, especially lower income people, are what lawyers call judgment proof. A creditor might take you to court and give a piece of paper that says you owe them this amount of money. But guess what? You can do that anyway, right? Okay, great, thanks. That and $5 at Starbucks might get you a cup of coffee. Enjoy it. Okay? Texas is a lousy place to be. If you're the person that's out there loaning the money, you better pick your credit risks wisely because it can be hard to get it back. So what about these never goes away? Well, you know, I think it was Mark Twain that said only 2 things in life are certain: death and taxes. That tax debt ain't going nowhere. Okay? Just don't even mess with the feds on income tax. Don't do it. Don't try to be cute. Don't try to be sneaky. I don't have to say it as much now, but 25 years ago when I started practicing law, I had to explain to people that there are these machines, and the IRS has them, and the Workforce Commission has them, and HUD has them. They're called computers, and guess what? They talk to each other. So unless you're working for cash under the table, they know about it. They know about it. Now, if you get yourself in a jam on your income tax, and it happens for all kinds of reasons, it's okay. It's all right. Go to them. I want an installment plan. They'll be happy to make an installment plan, make your payments, move on down the road. All right? Don't be afraid of it. There are two other debts that in our society almost never go away. Student loan debt. Okay? Now, if I had gone to college right out of high school, enforcement of student loan debt back in the 70s was not what it is today. There were a whole bunch of professionals that simply walked away from their student debt. And because of that, there are now much more stringent collection methods on your student loan debt. But there are also a lot more options for paying it off that didn't exist then. So if you get yourself in a jam on student loans, which if you're students, they're in deferment, that's good, contact Department of Ed. Tell them you have a problem. And by the way, stay away from those private student loan lenders. Stay away from them. They will tell you all kinds of stuff, and you do not get the same protections on paying back your student loans that you get when you stick to the federal subsidized loans. Okay? Income sensitive repayment, 20 years, consolidation, all kinds of options. And here's the other tip on student loans. You don't have to take the whole thing. Just because you got a letter from the financial aid office that said that you were approved to borrow $7,500, I don't know what the max is at this level. Is that about right? Doesn't mean you have to borrow $7,500. Go back to that budget and only take what you really think you're going to need. Law students back 25, 30 years ago could get this extra student loan of, at the time, it was like $22,000. And I watched my younger classmates do that. And they had very nice apartments inside the Loop. And they went to Galveston, and they went on skiing trips, and it piled up, and it piled up, and it piled up. Don't do that to yourself. When you do that, you're giving your power away. Okay? And I would be remiss, and I would be failing my obligation to the person who invited me to speak if we didn't talk about the third debt that doesn't go away. Child support.
Yeah.
It doesn't go
And
away. Most other types of judgments for money that come out of court cases have to be renewed every 10 years. Somebody has to go to the courthouse and they have to file what's called an abstract of judgment. For child support, as long as by the time the second anniversary of the child becoming an adult is reached, someone has what we call reduced the amount owed to judgment, it is fixed in fact and in law. No one can bring up any argument later for why it should have been less. It never goes away. I have had 65-year-old men in my office in tears because they were finally old enough to retire, hopped on down to the Social Security office, signed up for their Social Security retirement. They were looking forward to that first check, and that first check was half of what they thought it would be. And after some checking and asking some questions, they found out where the other half was going. It's going to the mother of their child. And that child is now 40. And they don't understand why the mother of a child who is now 40 is getting half of his Social Security. And I do some active listening. Yeah, oh, that sounds terrible. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And then I say, it's like this. It takes two people to create a child.
Right.
It really takes two people to raise a child well. And if you're not going to be there day to day, well, then you get to pay. And if you didn't pay while the child was a child, and mom had to do it all by herself or they went without, you were having a good time then. They're going to have a good time now. There's nothing anybody can do. I do tell them if you can scrape together a big chunk of money and go to her and ask her if she'll take that as settlement, maybe you should do that. But if you don't have a big pile of money, you're in trouble. Okay. So we've talked about staying out of debt. We've talked about kinds of debt. Now, what if the sky falls in? Okay? I can tell you about someone I know well and love dearly. My only son. He's 45. I have 3 children, all community college graduates. He was the last one to the party, but that's okay, he got there. And about this time last year, first he found out that Microsoft was laying off 300 people at their Seattle campus, and he was one of the 300. Now, I can't tell you how important that job was to him, because he had bounced around from job to job. I was so relieved when I learned that neuroscientists now know that the prefrontal cortex, where executive functioning sits, he ain't finished until we're 25, so there was hope, okay? So in his early 30s, like his mom, he finally made his way to community college and got a 2-year degree in network administration. By golly, 2 years later, he had a job at Microsoft making, I kid you not, $97,000 a year. Man, he was riding high. Okay? He tended to his financial obligations. He did have some debt. He and his girlfriend of several years bought a house together. It was lovely. They were having a grand time. Till he found out Microsoft was laying him off with 299 of his colleagues. She thought that was a good time to reveal she'd been having an affair with her boss.
With his boss.
And not long after that, I am not making this up,
Wow.
his dog almost died. Okay? To say he was sinking puts it mildly, but I have to tell you, he showed me he had learned the lessons. He'd been listening. First thing he did was he reduced his expenses. I mean, he came home, I called him to see how he was doing. He said, I'm unsubscribing. Get me off, get me off, get me off. Okay? And we kept in regular contact with him as he reduced his expenses, went back to that budget. When that didn't work, he can now show you 363 resumes and over 100 interviews that he went on. It took him until 2 weeks ago when he finally got another job, almost a year. But he did not lose his house. He did not lose his main transportation. He sold some toys. That's okay. That's a want, not a need, right?
Right.
So things happen. What do? Well, you have some options. Now, some people go right away to the bankruptcy option. That just seems like the best way. Just make it go away, right? Yeah, so here are the ugly little details. If you have a house you want to keep, If you have a car you want to keep that isn't paid for, you also have to have enough money to service the bankruptcy. It's called a reorganization, a Chapter 13. Going to throw all the debts into a big pot. Creditors are going to come and fight over how much income you have. And if you've got enough income, that if the bankruptcy court gives you 3 to 5 years to pay it off, you can pay it off, then you're good. But if you're considering bankruptcy, your income is falling. Where's that money going to come from? So bankruptcy is not a really good choice if you're trying to save an asset. Well, we have another type of bankruptcy. It's called Chapter 7. It's what I call the feel-good bankruptcy. You're not really trying to save an asset, but you want the phone calls to stop. I have talked to senior citizens who are afraid to answer their phone because it's a bill collector. Over 65% of bankruptcies in the United States are precipitated by a medical crisis. Okay, now I don't know about you, but my thing on Saturday night is not to show up at the emergency room and just go, I think I'll have let's have a gallbladder removal. Yeah, I'll have one of those. Right? Or, I think I just want to start coughing my brains out for 6 weeks. That sounds like a fun thing to do. We don't choose medical debt, it chooses us. Okay? So, the Chapter 7 makes it go away. But that's all it gets for you. It stops the bill collection efforts unless you make a mistake after it's all over with and reaffirm the debt, but we don't want to turn this into a legal ceiling. So it has limited utility. Not only that, but in bankruptcy, we have dischargeable debt and we have non-dischargeable debt. Student loans, not dischargeable. You may have seen the story that came out in the news, I think it was last week or the week before. There was a student, I want to say on the East Coast, and it was a landmark decision because the trial court found that he had proven enough hardship in his life to discharge the student debt. And that's very exciting for those of us that practice in that area, but it's been appealed. So we have to wait and see what higher courts do. And if it goes to the current Supreme Court, just toss it in the trash. Because the current Supreme Court will not let that stand. So some things can be discharged and others can't. And if what your problem is student loan debt, it's not going away. Tax debt, not going away. Child support, not going away. Okay, so now what can you do? Prioritize your debts based on negative consequences. Sit down with your budget. Figure out how much money you have coming in. If you can cough up any more, sell anything you can sell to pay off as much as you can. And now look at the consequences. If you don't pay your rent, you're not going to have a place to live. If you don't pay your utility bill, you're going to be sitting in the dark. If you don't make that car payment, you're going to be walking. So that means the first bills you stop paying when you have to is credit cards. But don't use them either because it's going to get worse. I have had people come to my office, they're in danger of losing their home because they're behind on the mortgage. And I ask them what happened. You qualified for the mortgage. What happened? One family, father died. The person paying the mortgage, his father died. And those nasty credit card companies were calling him, asking him if didn't he feel a moral obligation to pay his father's debts. And he was going to just be the worst human being if he didn't pay his dead father's credit card bills. Folks, They're not responsible for your parents' debts after they die. They're not responsible for your debts after you die. You're not responsible for your brothers, your sisters. You're not even responsible for your children for their debts when they die, unless they entered into a minor's contract for necessities. So before you let some credit card bill collector guilt you into paying something instead of paying your rent, don't do it. Is it going to go away? No, it's not going to go away. Can they sue you? Yeah, they can sue you. You owe the money. Remember what we talked about? Judgment proof. They cannot come back and get what you bought on the credit card. They can't do it. There are a few, what we call secured credit cards, and you pay a deposit. Usually the credit limit is very low, and this is a financial tool for building a credit report. That's the only way those should be used. And on those cards, if you buy consumer goods, theoretically, they can be repossessed if you don't pay the card. Nobody's going to want the stuff, but it's theoretically possible.